The story begins in the future. A massive explosion on the sun's surface completely destroyed the Earth's ozone layer, making it nearly impossible for any living thing to survive. This explosion is called a solar flare. The situation was so dire that anyone exposed to direct sunlight would burn. 15 years later, we find Finch, an engineer, searching for food with his robot partner, Dewey. To protect himself from the sun's deadly UV rays, he wore a special suit that shielded his entire body from radiation and alerted him to take cover if the radiation level increased. Finch, humming something, arrived at a store with Dewey. They collected dog food and other supplies. Numerous bodies lay on the ground, but they ignored them. After completing the task, Finch marked the building to remind him to evacuate it next time. He then boarded a truck and, using a map, arrived at a deserted town, surrounded by sand. There was no sign of a human being. Finch, therefore, was moving forward, clearing the path by hitting vehicles. Suddenly, Finch's suit alerted him to a massive storm approaching. Finch quickly tried to escape. In his haste, he nearly collided with several vehicles and escaped the town just in time. He soon arrived at his underground lab. This location previously belonged to the same space energy company he worked for. He was working. The storm was still rapidly approaching him. However, Finch managed to drag Dewey into the building, narrowly escaping his own life. Finally, once safe, Finch thoroughly cleaned his suit and Dewey. Then, while bathing himself, he began coughing violently. It was then revealed that he was about to die from the dangerous radiation. After thoroughly cleaning everything, Finch returned to his small room. Seeing him, his dog Goodyear jumped up to him, and Finch gave him a big hug. He then gave the dog the food he had brought. However, Finch only had one drink, as he had very little left to eat. Later, he stared longingly at the can of peaches in the refrigerator. But he somehow managed to restrain himself and saved it for a special occasion. Afterward, Finch returned to his main project. In fact, he was building a humanoid robot that would take care of Goodyear even after his death. One of Finch's robots scanned all the books in the library, saving all their information into a database. Now, Finch was going to put this database into the humanoid robot's brain. Occasionally, he would take a break and play catch with his dog. Then, in the evening, Finch was reading a book on radiation and became quite depressed, realizing he didn't have much time left. So instead of going to sleep, he continued working on his robot. He had almost made the head, but the eyes were missing. So he removed Dean's eyes and said, "I'll give him new eyes later." But as soon as he activated his robot, it couldn't speak, but it was answering Finch's questions by nodding its head. Finch was overjoyed to see this, and he quickly fixed its speech problem. Finally, the robot started talking, which his dog Goodyear was so impressed. Ear became a little frightened and barked at him. The robot then chose the name Jeff and told its owner, Finch, that it knew everything he had entered into the database. According to its programming, the robot had to obey all Finch's orders, the first of which was that it would not harm humans. Finally, Finch explained to Jeff that his true purpose was to take care of Goodyear after his death. Suddenly, the power in the building went out. Finch went outside and restarted the wind turbine, while Jeff tried to talk to Goodyear, but the dog simply urinated on his leg and walked away. Suddenly, Finch saw a massive storm approaching in the distance. He quickly ran inside and connected Jeff to the weather station. It was revealed that in the next 24 hours, 4 different storms would collide, creating a tornado that would last for about 40 days. There was no way to escape such a fierce storm, so Finch decided to leave as quickly as possible. Finally, he ate his can of peaches and, ignoring the blood pouring from his nose, checked the map. Realizing this was the last resort for escape, they now had to head west, toward San Francisco. Finch then completed Jeff's body and increased the data transfer speed. However, he calculated that only 72% of the work would be completed. But he didn't have much time. Finally, he connected the robot's body to its head, and Jeff stood up. Then Finch taught him to walk, which prompted Goodyear to bark even more. Jeff stumbled and fell a few times. Afterward, Finch packed all their supplies. Meanwhile, Dewey, lacking eyes, was constantly bumping into things. So Finch used his security camera to give him new eyes. The entire team then set off in their army uniform. On the way, they noticed that the surrounding areas had turned into desert. Finch then told them about the golden days of Earth, when it used to be full of beautiful flowers and animals. Then he noticed a screw was loose in Jeff's head. So when they all arrived in a new city, Finch stopped and fixed it. While Finch was working, Jeff looked at his postcard collection. Finch treasured the San Francisco postcard, especially because it had been sent to him by someone close to him. Then Jeff said that he really liked the Sydney postcard and wanted to go there. But it wasn't possible without a plane. No, so finally he said, San Francisco is great too. We'll hang out there. Finally, after the repairs were complete, Finch said he'd go out to find something to eat. But when Dewey learned that this time Finch was taking Jeff with him instead, he was deeply disappointed. As they set out on the road, Finch told Jeff to pack his things. And eventually, while wandering around, they came upon a movie theater. Its door was secured with a thick chain, but Jeff easily broke it down with his strength. Once inside, Jeff was overjoyed when he saw himself in the mirror for the first time. Finch found a bag of popcorn. He went outside and showed Jeff that the sun's rays were so strong that all the popcorn had toasted itself in a matter of seconds. But just then they saw a storm approaching them. They immediately boarded their armored vehicles and fled the city. But the storm was about to overtake them. Their only option was to find a safe haven. Finch, with Jeff's help, tied the RV together with wires to prevent it from being blown away by the storm. Finch was very weak from his illness, so he quickly tired. Jeff then sent him back into the RV and finished the job himself, working frantically. Inside, Finch placed Goodyear inside a cabinet, quickly covered all the windows, and called out to Jeff. As Jeff tied the last wire, the storm reached their army, but Jeff also got inside just in time. As the storm hit, the RV began to shake violently. Finch and Jeff stayed inside, a little nervous. Outside, all the wires began to break one by one, until finally only one remained. The RV continued to shake for a long time, and finally the storm passed. After which, they all got out of the RV. Finch saw that the only thing left was the wire that Jeff had used with all his might. The storm had also damaged one of their tires, so Jeff lifted the RV with his own hands so Finch could change the tire comfortably. Then the whole team spent the night there, resting. The next morning, they unpacked the solar panels and set off again. Later, Jeff even started barking at Goodyear because he thought he might learn dog language. But Finch told him not to worry. Goodyear would learn to trust him with time. Later, while she was on the way, Jeff asked her what trust really was. But Finch didn't know how to explain it to her. Then she told Jeff a story. When he was in his first job, no one was working properly on his project. Finch single-handedly solved all the software problems, but when it came to giving credit, he named the entire team, saying they all worked together. This way, he won everyone's trust. But Jeff didn't understand the story much. Just then, Finch started coughing violently. Then they stopped at a restaurant for a break. He parked the RV in the shade at the entrance and ran into the restaurant without his suit on. But then he noticed I was coughing up blood. Suddenly, he heard Goodyear barking. Then he saw Goodyear agree to come out with Jeff. It wasn't there. Finch took the RV by the leash himself and brought it into the restaurant and told Jeff to take care of the RV. Finch was playing with Goodyear, while Jeff sat in the driver's seat, turned on some music and tried to start the RV. But it collided with a car. Hearing the noise, Finch immediately ran out. Seeing him, Goodyear followed him. He was about to step into the sunlight when Finch stopped him just in time. Finch scolded Jeff and told him to park the RV carefully. But this time, the car collided with the restaurant. Finch, filled with anger, extended his hand into the sun and showed Jeff, "Look how badly it burns." He angrily yelled at Jeff, "Goodyear could have died because of your mistake. Be very careful with your actions. Your real focus should be on Goodyear later." As the car drove off, Finch noticed that Jeff was quite sad. So he decided to teach Jeff how to drive. At first, Jeff struggled a bit, bumping into things, but he soon got the technique down and began driving comfortably. Finally, when night fell, they stopped and watched the beautiful northern lights together. Now that the Earth's ozone layer had been depleted, they were easily visible. Jeff asked why they didn't travel at night if the sun was such a problem. Finch explained that people were wandering around aimlessly. There were many hungry people who lurked in the shadows and attacked. The next morning, Jeff heard Goodyear barking and ran to Finch. Finch was vomiting and shivering badly. Jeff took good care of him and then told him to rest. He then began driving himself and soon reached a new town. Jeff then asked Goodyear to stay with Finch and went out to find something to eat, taking Dewey with him. First, they entered a hospital but found nothing there. Jeff told Dewey to wait at the door and went up the stairs himself. but neither of them noticed someone watching them from the darkness. Here, Jeff found some medicine and a jacket which he put on. Then he found a cabinet containing a large amount of essential supplies. Downstairs, Dewey also found some food. But as he approached, he ended up trapped in a trap. Meanwhile, Finch opened his eyes and saw that his robots were gone. He realized he was in trouble, so despite his weakened state, he put on his suit and rushed out. Within moments, he reached Dewey. Finch couldn't bear to see him in such a dire state, so he turned off Dewey's power button. At that very moment, he heard someone approaching and prepared to attack. But it was none other than Jeff. Finch scolded him severely because Jeff hadn't noticed that a trap had been set. Suddenly, they heard a noise nearby and he immediately ran away. Then, on the stairs, Finch began coughing violently and fell to his knees, but the sounds were rapidly approaching them. So Jeff picked Finch up, and they both quickly ran out of the building. They then hurried to the RV and quickly escaped. A few hours later, when night fell, Finch finally noticed someone was following them in a car. Jeff had night vision, and he could see the car even in the dark. He could have driven, so he turned off all the lights, but the car still followed them. They tried to accelerate, but then Finch noticed an underpass ahead. He swerved the steering wheel just in time, taking the RV off the road. Jeff explained to Finch that the RV was taller than the underpass, and that they would get stuck. But Finch, in a panic, continued driving so he could hide it under the underpass. Well, Jeff's advice turned out to be absolutely correct. But now, hitting the underpass had damaged the solar panels on the RV's roof. Now that they were damaged, Jeff pushed with all his might, hiding the RV completely under the underpass. They were all terrified and waited for the car behind them to leave. Then Jeff noticed that Finch carried a gun for protection. Luckily, the car drove off and Finch got out and saw the damage. He cursed himself, thinking, "Now I can't even repair it." He understood that they wouldn't be able to reach San Francisco in this condition. Jeff tried to encourage him, but Finch lost his temper and started yelling at him. But Jeff remained undeterred and went into the RV, saying, "I have complete faith in you. You'll do something." Then Finch told him another story. Initially, after the solar flare, people were still learning to live in new ways. Finch entered a supermarket and found a bag of noodles. Then he saw a mother and daughter whose cart was full of groceries. The girl was holding a gun, and her mother repeatedly told him to shoot anyone he saw. Fearing death, Finch hid. But just then, a thug arrived with a short gun and demanded the groceries. In the ensuing scuffle, the thug fired several shots. By the time Finch emerged, both mother and son were dead. But then he heard a voice. He looked inside the girl's bag and found a frightened puppy. That day, Finch adopted the puppy, named it Goodyear, and vowed to protect it forever. From that day on, he decided not to trust anyone. The next morning, Finch was resting while Jeff was driving the RV. Jeff checked the postcards and discovered that the one in San Francisco was signed by Finch's father, and the other postcards were completely blank. At that very moment, the computer suddenly informed him that the UV rays here were not as dangerous, and suddenly a butterfly collided with the RV. Jeff was at a loss. He stopped the RV and picked Finch up. Surprised, Finch reached out and wasn't burned. He jumped with joy and went outside to enjoy the sunshine. He was overjoyed when he saw butterflies and a flower nearby. After traveling for several hours, they began to see many trees and plants in the nearby area. To celebrate, Finch put on his special suit, stopped the RV, and sat down for a picnic in the sun. Jeff then said he saw them all standing on the bridge last night. This delighted Finch, as Jeff had now learned to dream like humans. Jeff then asked him why he lied about the postcard. Finch told him a new story. When he was a child, his mother told him that his father had Viking blood in his veins. Finch then showed Jeff a picture of a Viking funeral. Finch's father had passed away before he was born. He was an engineer who built massive bridges, and his work required him to travel to different countries. Finch never spoke to him, but then, on his 15th birthday, he received a postcard. His father had said he had written that he would one day like to meet his son, and Finch had bought this suit for this special occasion. Unfortunately, he never heard from his father after that. Jeff found this story fascinating. He said, "If we leave quickly, we can reach the Golden Gate within 18 hours. Your father sent a postcard from there, didn't he?" But Finch reminded him of his condition. He wouldn't be able to reach there. He was going to die in a short while. Then he threw a ball and taught Jeff how to play with Goodyear. But even when Jeff threw the ball, Goodyear would bring it back and give it to Finch because he still didn't trust Jeff. Suddenly, Finch started coughing up a lot of blood. Jeff tried to help him, but Finch said, "You've already helped me a lot." Then he shook Jeff's hand and hugged him. Finally, Finch went to lie down in the RV, and Goodyear went to him. Jeff stayed outside, gathering his belongings. But as the sun set, he heard Goodyear's cries and realized Finch was dead. Finally, in his honor, Jeff and Goodyear cremated him along with his suit and gave him a Viking-style funeral. At first, Jeff was unsure of what to do next. But soon he remembered his promise to take care of Goodyear. He fed Goodyear and then threw him a ball. Goodyear brought the ball back to him for the first time. They soon became friends as they played, and Goodyear even hugged Jeff. Eventually, they set out again, determined to reach Finch's destination. Finally, when they reached San Francisco, Jeff built a memorial in Finch's memory and went to see the Golden Gate with Goodyear. The beauty of the place left his eyes wide open, and he also saw the messages people had left for their families. Seeing all this, Jeff told Goodyear that they should find these survivors and help them. Finally, he hung a drawing of his team on a postcard and wished Goodyear the world a new life. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.